What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to another live stream on High Altitude Investing. Today is the 3rd of February 2026, and I am super hyped and excited to be doing a live stream for you guys today, talking about the crypto markets because I am so hyped about the patterns that I'm seeing in this market. The opportunity right now is absolutely unbelievable for massive profits in these markets. So I'm super excited. Go ahead and share the link on Discord and on X, and then we'll go ahead and get started today. I was going to do a video about Litecoin, but then I was like, you know what? We have enough exciting market movement right now that I should probably do a crypto live stream because you guys love these live streams and I love doing them too. So it works out for everybody, right? Share the link here on Discord and go over to X as well and share the link over here. What is up, everybody? Good to see all of you guys tuning in. Boomy, hey, what's up? Thank you for tuning in. I'll check you guys' messages in just a second. Let's get this link shared here. It is a good day to be alive. You know, once you really fall in love with the way that these markets work and you get a clear understanding of the type of psychology that you should have in these markets, days like this, they get you excited. They do not scare you. It's like, yes. Because most people have no idea what's going on, but the people that know, they know exactly what's happening. So it is actually a very exciting day to be streaming about crypto. De Gomez hit the thumbs up button. Thank you, De Gomez, for that. The Prairie banana. Is that Prairie banana? I think that's how you say it, Prairie. I'm pumped too, man. That's good. Super excited. Operation Shutdown. What is up? Thank you for tuning in, my brother. XRP/BTC held strong. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Bitcoin is actually losing dominance, but altcoins are holding like pretty good, which is a sign of us shifting from a Bitcoin dominant market to an altcoin dominant market, even though Bitcoin, of course, just skyrockets during alt season, still just doesn't do as big percentage gain. Let's see. Boomy says, or bounce to 90K first. You know, we'll talk about the charts in just a second. Josh says, good morning, Dallin. Doesn't feel like the bottom. You know, we'll talk about the charts in just a second, but I understand the sentiment of that comment. BTC or BTGC/UFO. Yeah, we'll check some of those other coins in a second. I want to start with Bitcoin and then we'll cover some of that stuff. Rapid says, hey, Dallin, on the short term, BTC is downtrending, but some alts are uptrending. What does this mean? Well, what it could mean is that we're shifting from a Bitcoin dominant market into an altcoin dominant market, because technically speaking, when the bull market is going to go full force, like when we go to that full-blown parabolic run, what actually happens is there's a shift. The big whales sell a good chunk of their Bitcoin. Bitcoin crashes a little bit, and they start moving into the altcoins because the percentage gain is going to be bigger. And so that's where we get the big alt season. It's not that Bitcoin won't rally, because I'm a big believer in Bitcoin going up to at least 250,000 per coin. But it's that people start to see the massive opportunity in altcoins, and you start to see that in the charts as people move their money from Bitcoin into those altcoins. Yes, sir. It's a good day for holders. Cool, I did pronounce it right. Only crypto R. Hey, brother. Well, hello. Thank you for tuning in, and I definitely will cover those coins you're requesting. In fact, let's run over Bitcoin because you guys are already flooding the chat with a whole bunch of different altcoins for me to cover. So let's cover Bitcoin first, and then we can just go full force into all these altcoins and stuff. So what Bitcoin is doing right now is nothing out of what's a typical crypto stuff. You know, if you've been around crypto for a long time, or even if you're new to crypto, you've probably seen some pretty scary corrections, some pretty big drops in price. It's just what Bitcoin does. Crypto is by very definition, due to market cap, due to a lot of other factors, is still more volatile than the stock market or even most of the Forex market, but some of the Forex market is more volatile than crypto, like Venezuela's currency, right? Oh, man. But yeah, so here with Bitcoin, Bitcoin actually did this really big divergence. So even though we did break bearish here in terms of falling through this support level right here and going lower, the MACD actually has not made a lower low. In fact, as we speak, and especially on the 12 hour, we're starting to curl bullish a little bit here on the MACD. So this is actually the early signs of bullish divergence for Bitcoin, which is a huge buy signal here on the 12 hour and on the daily as well. So keep an eye on this 12-hour MACD. Watch for the blue line to cross up through the orange line like it did right here. Because as that happens, that's really going to confirm a market bottom here for Bitcoin. Not only a market bottom, but a market bottom that coincides with a massive bullish divergence on the MACD. So that will be a huge, huge green signal for money to flood back in. The other thing that's really important here about Bitcoin right now, Bitcoin fell onto this support level. So this is our market support level that used to be resistance along the way up, where we rejected here at 73, came back down to 50, and then went all the way up to 126. So we're actually testing a very, very key support level on Bitcoin. So that's a super good thing. The fact that we have bullish divergence forming on the 12-hour and on the daily, and that we've landed onto this major horizontal support line for Bitcoin. That's super, super key. The next level of support that we can see here is about 68. So coming back over to our old all-time high here in 2021. That's another area of support. And then the next area of support below that is 64. So there's a bunch of major all-time support on Bitcoin in this area. Just massive areas of liquidity and support on Bitcoin. So that's pretty important to be aware of that. So what I see coming for Bitcoin is at some point, it could be happening now, it could test one more lower support level, but at some point in this area here with Bitcoin, we're going to get a curl around back on the upside. And when this happens, the MACD will put in that higher low. So we'll get bullish divergence off of a major support level, which is a massive buy signal for Bitcoin. In fact, for people that are calling for like 50K and 30K per Bitcoin, this is the thing that they're not looking at. The people that are kind of more perma-bearish, that are calling for really low targets, they're not looking at the fact that we have all of this liquidity in this area right here for Bitcoin, and the fact that we have bullish divergence forming on the MACD. So for the people that are extra bearish right now, this is what they need to be aware of to kind of get a better perspective of what the market's doing and make wiser investing decisions here with Bitcoin. So just be aware of all of this major support on Bitcoin. The other thing too is this is a pretty typical Wyckoff spring. So if you don't know about Wyckoff, that's spelled Wyckoff. These are common accumulation and distribution patterns. And a pretty common thing that I've seen, well, actually this happens all the time with crypto, is what's called a Wyckoff spring. So this is the standard Wyckoff accumulation schematic here. And basically what happens is, and this is so common for crypto, the market will form a bottom formation like this, and it could even potentially, this is why you have to be aware of different potentials, right? Because sometimes these bottom formations do play out. Like we had an Adam and Eve bottom forming on Bitcoin, and it could, like sometimes they play out, you know, sometimes you just get a clear breakout based on a bottom formation. But what can also happen is you have to be aware of different alternatives to take the fear away, to take the panic away, because most people are trading based on emotion. That's why they freak out when the market drops. So we did have a bottom formation on Bitcoin here, but it didn't hold. We went for another low. But what actually can happen is this is actually turned into an alternative perspective here, where what we've done here is a typical Wyckoff spring. So right here, this is a typical Wyckoff accumulation, and this is where you go for one more big low. So this spring right here, you can see it actually falls below the previous support level. See this support right here? You actually go below that and scare the living heck out of people, to where they're literally sitting there wondering, is this going to go down forever? Is this it for crypto? Is it done? So this is a pretty typical Wyckoff accumulation for Bitcoin. No, we did not get our Adam and Eve bottom to play out that we were initially looking at. But to have one more low down here is not a big reason to just turn into this ultimate bear that's calling for 50K or even 30K, especially considering how oversold we are in relation to our all-time high here at 126,000. We're down 42% from our peak. So this is not a place to be taking short positions on Bitcoin. This is, in terms of opportunity, the opportunity is in the bulls for going long, not in the bears for going short down here. So that's a pretty typical kind of structure here for Bitcoin. So this helps keep the panic away when you're aware of different potentials that can happen in the market, and then you act accordingly. Most people right now, they're selling. They're taking shorts. The people that were bullish right here on Bitcoin, most of them are bearish now. Most of them are they flipped. They're getting tricked by the whales. But that's really not the smartest thing to be doing. And by the way, all of your altcoins are still holding perfect structure. Let's pull up XRP BTC here. And what people don't realize about XRP, so XRP failed support, right? We had a breakdown. This was our low here at 106 or at $1.63, and we had a breakdown below that level. But what people don't realize is the fact that XRP is still bullish market structure. Here's a falling wedge pattern. This is a bullish accumulation pattern here on XRP to see this falling wedge forming currently. The other thing that's really common for these markets is to do the expanded flat Elliott wave. So a typical ABC correction looks like this, right? Where you have wave A, wave B, and wave C. This is a typical ABC correction in the market. Then there's another type of ABC correction called a running flat. And this looks like this, okay? This is a running flat correction. But then there's another Elliott wave correction called an expanded flat. And that's actually looks like this, where wave B goes up above, and then wave C actually drops slightly below the bottom of wave A. And if we just take this and move this over here, you can see that's exactly what XRP just did, is an expanded flat correction. So even XRP isn't breaking bullish structure. In fact, if you look at the MACD, we're not overbought like you'd see at a typical market top like we were right here. We're actually oversold on the MACD. Now, let's look at one other chart here. Let's pull up AVAX here. AVAX is another prime example of one of these altcoins that's still in perfect bullish market structure. So we actually have bullish divergence here on AVAX. So you can see lower lows, but the MACD actually made a higher low. So that's a buy signal here. And also, kind of like what XRP is doing as well, there's a falling wedge. And we're at the bottom of the range. So this falling wedge is a trading range, and we're at the bottom of this trading range. So this is the best. We're on major support. So not only are we on major support with Bitcoin, we're also on major support with AVAX. We're on major support with the altcoin total market cap. So excluding Bitcoin, we're on major support. We're on major support across the board, really, for the crypto markets. And we have bullish divergences forming across the board as well. So that's actually a really strong buy signal for crypto to see that, to see all of these patterns forming like this. So it's actually really exciting. All right, let's see what some of you guys are saying here in the chat. Dogecoin link. Yeah, let's just start covering altcoins because there's a lot of altcoins to cover here in the chat. So let's pull up PTGC first. And this is, you guys, this is why I decided to do a live stream today, because a lot of people are going to be following major channels. They're going to be on X and they're going to see all of this bearish stuff. They're going to be on TradingView. They're going to see big accounts calling for 30K, calling for 50K. Just really, there's a lot of downside right now. So I figured I'd hop on a live stream today to kind of dispel all of the illusions and just show you what the market is actually doing and show you guys the reality in a clear, concise, level-headed perspective. So let's pull up PTGC here as our first altcoin to cover for the day. PTGC. Oh, that's PTCG. Apparently I'm slightly dyslexic today, you guys. All right. So my view on this hasn't changed since the last time we talked about it. This is a typical ABC correction here. Clearly, the euphoria phase of the market cycle was over here when it reached its all-time high, kind of at the beginning of 2025 right here. Then this is a massive ABC correction along the way down. And we're at that 92% retracement where like 90% of altcoins bottom out at that 92% retracement. So you're talking about a good majority of altcoins bottom out 90% plus from their previous market cycle peak down. So this still looks really good to me from the last time that you had me cover this coin. Now let's cover some other coins in the chat here because we've got a lot of requests. So Dogecoin, same thing with AVAX. So actually before I exit AVAX, what I want to show you here with AVAX is the same thing that the Bitcoin did in its previous cycle as well. So let's pull up BTC here. So I want to get this imprinted in your mind, because if you guys can remember this pattern in the market, it's going to help you a lot in the future. Because I have no doubt in my mind that at some point in the future, this exact same pattern is going to pop up again. So this is Bitcoin on the right, and this is AVAX over here on the left. And actually, this is a very typical market cycle structure. In fact, let's pull up the NASDAQ as well to show you what this looks like. Because markets really do the same thing over and over again. They really do. With subtle differences, there's sometimes a different type of sort of sentiment to it, like a little bit of a different attitude, if you want to use that word, to the way that it looks. But it's essentially the same thing happening in the market over and over again, right? So here's the NASDAQ, and this is what a market cycle looks like, okay? Massive pump, big rally in price, followed by an insanely large correction. In fact, a typical, you'd call this a bear market because it's such a big drop, right? And then a good majority of the time, you're going to get a big double bottom pattern forming, followed by a big recovery in price, a big vertical recovery. So this is a market cycle, okay? Huge pump, pullback, double bottom, recovery. That's what a market cycle is. Going back over to Bitcoin, this is the same thing. By the way, I used this example of the NASDAQ composite here when Bitcoin tested this level right here, so when Bitcoin, during the COVID drop, when Bitcoin looked like this, just like how AVAX looks right now. See how I took all of the pump that came afterwards off of the chart? And now we're just looking solely at the way Bitcoin looked at that market bottom there. What cued me into this bottom right here on Bitcoin was I compared it to the NASDAQ. Because this is the internet bubble. If you guys don't know, this is the internet bubble. And Bitcoin pretty much did an internet bubble in 2017. And altcoins did a pretty typical internet bubble in 2021 type of structure. So what cued me into the bottom here, and let me pull up my ebook to show you kind of what cued me in, because I was actually writing this ebook when Bitcoin was bottoming right here at this bottom right here on Bitcoin. And I promise I'm pulling up Dogecoin, but I want to bring home this point about market cycles so you guys can get a pretty good idea of why the market does what it does. So if you pull up my ebook, which by the way is completely free, if you're a member of my Discord, go down to, which is my free Discord, go down to Knowledge and Links, and you'll see a link for my free ebook here. Print it out if you want to, and it'll really help you. It just goes over all of the basics. So essentially what cued me into the Bitcoin bottom here was market cycles. So if you look right here, I have this example in my ebook where you can see that I have the NASDAQ index right here on the top, and I have Bitcoin down here on the bottom. So what cued me into the bottom right here on Bitcoin, right here, was actually comparing it to the NASDAQ. I was looking at this fractal on the NASDAQ saying, you guys, look, Bitcoin right here in 2018 and 2019 is in the despair phase of its cycle. This is the bottom of a market cycle. And sure enough, that was the exact bottom on Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin rallied all the way to 69,000. I mean, it did a big double bottom just like how the NASDAQ did first, but it followed the NASDAQ perfectly. I mean, if I just switch between these two charts like this, look at that. I'll just put the NASDAQ over here so they're more lined up here on the screen. Look at that. Isn't that crazy how the same pattern appeared in the market? And what AVAX is doing right now is a typical market cycle. That's what it's doing. AVAX has formed a perfect, typical pump, pullback, double bottom, the same thing that cued me into the Bitcoin bottom in 2019, 2018, and here in 2020. Same exact pattern in the market that's forming on AVAX. So I wanted to kind of drill this point into your minds, because look at Dogecoin. Now to cover Dogecoin as requested in the chat, I wanted to do all of this kind of precursor explaining because it's going to really tell you why I'm so bullish on Dogecoin. So let's pull up Dogecoin right here. What do you think Dogecoin is doing right now? Dogecoin is doing the exact same thing that Bitcoin did right here in 2020. When Bitcoin pulled back, it's the exact same thing. So this is the disbelief phase on Bitcoin. This was the despair phase right here, or also known as depression, depending on what market cycle example that you're looking at. This is the despair/depression phase. This is the suckers rally, where the price rallies back up, and then this is disbelief right here on Bitcoin. And this is despair or depression on Dogecoin right here. Here's a suckers rally, and here is disbelief on Dogecoin. So this kind of helps to understand this. It helps remove all of the fear. Because the worst part about trading and investing when you're new to it is being afraid of losing money, right? That's the scariest thing. You have money invested in the market, you want to make a lot of money, you've been told by a lot of people that the market's going to go up, so you're afraid of losing money, right? You see the market dropping and it's scary. But once you learn the cycle and you learn how to properly identify the cycle, that fear goes away. I wasn't afraid of Bitcoin going to 1,000 per coin when it was at 3,000 per coin right here, even though everybody was calling for 1,000 per coin, because I was comparing it to the NASDAQ, and I knew that the NASDAQ was in depression right here, and the Bitcoin was in depression right here. So it wasn't scary for me. Even the COVID drop, a global pandemic was breaking out. I just compared it to the disbelief phase on the NASDAQ and said, this is bullish. Bitcoin is bullish. I wasn't afraid of Bitcoin going down because of the cycle. So the way to take away that fear is to have a correct understanding of human psychology and market cycles. That's why I teach it so often in these live streams and in my videos as well, because it is the fundamental piece of knowledge that you need to have a correct understanding of in order to take away the fear, make good investing decisions, and be on the right side of the market. And this ebook will help you with that. So I highly recommend downloading this free ebook and reading it. I also talk about the basics of Elliott Wave principle. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and it's crypto specific too, right? This ebook is designed for crypto specific. It's not just stock stuff, although I will say I have a whole bunch of stock trading books as well. I've been rereading. If you get books about investing in the market, stock trading books will work too. And here's a couple of my personal favorites. Japanese Candlestick Charting Techniques by Steve Nyssen. I'm rereading this one right now as we speak. Applying Elliott Wave Theory Profitability by Stephen W. Poser. So the stuff that all of the stock market stuff, this is how I learned, initially how I learned technical analysis, because when I first got into this, there were not people that were making crypto technical analysis videos on YouTube. There was like maybe 2 or 3 people that were. Not like it is today. So the only information that you had was going and watching stock trading videos and patterns and getting as much information as you could, or buying books about that and learning. All of this stuff is universal because humans are trading these markets, and humans have certain types of reactions to patterns and psychological stuff in the market. This is another really good one. Technical Analysis of the Financial Markets by John J. Murphy. So I recommend buying. So download this free ebook, but all because it's crypto specific, but also stock trading stuff is helpful too. Encyclopedia of Chart Patterns, really good book by Thomas N. Bulkowski. So it's really helpful to get as much information and knowledge as you possibly can about this stuff. So this is where Dogecoin is at in its cycle. If you want to know what's coming for Dogecoin, all I have to do is press play on this playback button for Bitcoin. If I press play right here, watch what Bitcoin does. This is seriously what's coming for Dogecoin. Keep your eye on the right-hand side of my screen over here. Look at what Bitcoin did. Massive bottom recovery off of those lows. You can see some panics. I remember how many people were bearish right here at 7K. Here at 10K, they were super bearish right here at 10K. But look what happened to Bitcoin after that bottom of the market. Look at that full-blown recovery. If you want to know what's coming for AVAX, if you want to know what's coming for Dogecoin, this is what's coming for those markets. This right here. Full-blown breakout back up to the old all-time high and above, even beyond the old all-time high. Pretty cool, right? So that's why it's so important to understand the cycle of human emotion. That's why I talk about it over and over. And it might not be exciting, it might not be sexy to talk about market cycles, you know, but it's the truth of what's going to make you a profitable trader and investor. So I don't care if it's sexy or cool. It's what's going to help you guys. And my mission statement for my channel, or one of my main focuses of my channel, is to make, above all else, to make my people profitable. That's my goal, is to make my people profitable. So even though I get hater comments when I'm bullish and everybody else is bearish, and I talk about stuff that seems like it's, oh, this isn't sexy or cool to talk about, well, I'm giving you the stuff that works, because my goal is to make you guys profitable. Because if you're more profitable, I'm more profitable, we all win together, and that's what true success is, right? Is everybody winning as a big team. Oh, thank you for the analysis, or the donation, and I'll happily do analysis on Zora, for sure. I've been a big believer in Zora. So let's pull up the chart here, and we'll cover the analysis on this coin. Let's remove all the drawing tools, and cool. So just looking at Zora here, you can see 5 waves up. Pretty typical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up, followed by our classic zigzag correction, A, B, and C. Now we have a big spike in volume right here, which is good. In fact, let's take a look at Bitcoin dominance and see what Bitcoin dominance is doing right now. Pulling up the Bitcoin dominance chart. Bitcoin dominance is not looking good right now. We still broke bearish out of this rising wedge. You know, this is still the structure that the market is clearly showing. That we have a bearish break from a rising wedge that started forming back here in 2022. And then we came up and retested the wedge. You can see right here, there's a wick. Came up and tested the wedge right there. And then now this is a very typical breakdown of a rising wedge, to have a retest. And now we're showing weakness. Bitcoin dominance is not looking bullish. Now, if Bitcoin dominance was looking bullish, I would be very, very bearish on the entirety of crypto, because of the fact that when Bitcoin dominance looks bullish, you're either starting a new bull market, so Bitcoin is leading, or you're starting a bear market and everybody's selling their altcoins because they don't want to lose any more money, because they're losing it super fast holding altcoins that are dropping off a cliff. And so Bitcoin dominance starts to increase because it's more viewed as more stable than altcoins are, because it technically is. So the fact that Bitcoin dominance is bearish is not a sign that we're headed into a big correction. It's not a sign that Bitcoin is going to go to 30K. It's not a sign that Bitcoin is going to go to 50K. It's a sign that altcoins and Bitcoin are going to go up, because full-blown bull markets, Bitcoin dominance goes down. Like here in 2017, Bitcoin went from 1,000 per coin to 20,000, but Bitcoin dominance fell off a cliff because altcoins pumped even harder. Same right here in 2021. So Bitcoin dominance being bearish is not only good for your favorite altcoins like Zora here, but it's also good for crypto as a whole, because that tells you that people are thinking in terms of risk on. And I'm not talking about retail money, because all of those guys are panic selling and freaking out. But I'm talking about the dudes that actually move the market because they have billions of dollars and they know exactly what to do with their capital. And Zora right now is on a perfect entry. You can see the price pulled back, but we're actually right on the 92% retracement. Like I've been talking about how 90% of altcoins bottom at the 92% retracement. If you pull up Ethereum over here, you'll see that Ethereum bottomed on the 92% retracement perfectly. Like, check this out. From market bottom to market peak. Throw the 92 on here. That's exactly where Ethereum bottomed, was the 92%. Now, Bitcoin bottoms in between the 786 and the 88% in its big picture cycle. But altcoins will bottom at the 92% retracement like 90% of the time. Unless they're just totally dead, then of course they're not going to bottom out at all. They're just going to keep crashing forever. But big projects that have a real reason to be invested into it, they bottom at the 92% retracement 90% of the time. And there's no difference here with Zora. Perfect ABC correction right onto the 92% retracement with an increase in volume. I believe sooner rather than later, you'll see this thing uptrending like this. You will see the price of Zora going up. This ended up being a big bull trap right here, but it's okay. You don't get discouraged if the market drops down to the 92%. You actually get excited if you have your head on straight. So that's a good entry there with Zora. I really believe that will do big things. Crypto 7, what is up, my brother? Thank you for tuning in, and it's good to see you here. Grappling Hero says, bought some more AVAX today. Nice. That is awesome to hear. I love it when I see people doing the right thing in these markets. It's so refreshing. And I love my followers because you guys, a lot of you guys are really smart people. I guess like attracts like because you guys do the right thing in these markets in the sense of buying the dip when everybody else is selling. It's only a select few people in my chat that are like super bearish or, doing the wrong thing. So it's really cool to see how you guys are actually really smart people and you think for yourselves, and that's super refreshing to be around that kind of energy. All right, so let's pull up Telcoin here. We've got a Telcoin request in the chat. Oh, so yeah, Zora should continue to uptrend, and I do expect a break above the old all-time high. Or Zora should start an uptrend, and I do expect a break above the old all-time high. Let's close out of Zora here and pull up Telcoin. So Telcoin is kind of testing people's patience, but the thing is you have to understand, Telcoin is so freaking bullish that of course there's going to be a shakeout of retail before it pumps. And this pullback right here, that news came out of really positive news for Telcoin. Then we had a pullback back down to support. So that's a classic, that little drop that we saw, which it's big if you're zoomed into it, If you're zoomed out, it doesn't look very big, but that was a 63% drop from the peak. So if you're looking at your account, you're like, man, this is kind of scary. I'm down 63% from where I was up when everybody was excited. But that's a pretty typical retail shakeout. To shake out up to, 60% drops or bigger drops like that is pretty typical retail shakeout. So Telcoin is so bullish, it doesn't surprise me at all that we had a pullback there, 63% from that peak down. But if you want to know the truth of what's coming for Telcoin, just look at Ethereum. And I've shared this chart before, so this isn't anything new at all. I'm not sharing you some new exciting thing that you can, get all excited about, but I'm telling you something that you should be excited about whether you are or not. Whether it's sexy and cool, who cares? This is the truth of what it is. So if you look at Telcoin on the left and Ethereum over here on the right, you can see a typical big picture crypto altcoin market cycle. And where Telcoin is at right now is the disbelief phase of its cycle, just like how Ethereum was right here. Perfect entry here at 0.002 cents. What's coming for Telcoin is exactly what happened to Ethereum in 2021. And by the way, if you're wondering about Ethereum and what Ethereum is doing right now, this is a big retail shakeout as well for Ethereum. We tested the old all-time high. People thought it was going to go straight to the moon, so all of the retail got shaken out of the market. And now Ethereum is on major support. We have a massive amount of support for Ethereum all through this whole area right here. So Ethereum is also a perfect entry. You're talking about being down 57% from the peak. If that's not a good buy the dip opportunity, I don't know what is. That's a perfect buy the dip opportunity for Ethereum. I love that setup. It's perfect. Looks amazing. So if you're wondering what's coming for Telcoin, this is what's coming for Telcoin. See this huge monstrous recovery in price because of the market cycle bottom? That's exactly what's coming for Telcoin. A monstrous recovery up above the old all-time high to a new all-time high, and then we can have a subsequent bear market and correction. But for now, the smart investors are not selling, they're buying, or they're holding on to their bags that they've already established and positioned themselves with. You and I are both authors. Cool. That's awesome, man. It's pretty fun to write books. I've written a couple books in my life. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's good to get the practice and stuff. One noob was saying Hex is a scam and why you should support Hex when Richard Hart already sold his coins and left the project. You know, people will call everything a scam. Like seriously, people call Bitcoin a scam and it hit 126,000, but I got into Bitcoin when it was worth $180. So and the entire time people called Bitcoin a scam. The entire way up, they said Bitcoin's a scam, Bitcoin's a scam, Bitcoin's a scam. People told me, I remember I was in 2018, Bitcoin was worth like 5,000 per coin, okay? And I was doing rides with my girlfriend. I was doing like my girlfriend at the time. We were doing a whole bunch of riding rides at Six Flags, okay? And I went into this little gift shop. But this guy in there was like, "Oh, you're a really cool person. Like we connected really well." Right? So then but the problem was he asked me what I do for a living. So I was like, "Well, I run a crypto channel." He's like, "Get out of it now. Bitcoin is a total scam. You should totally get out of it." We were no longer friends anymore, apparently, after that. Like, he hated me, you know? But Bitcoin hit $126,000 since then. So it's so funny to see what people think about stuff that they call a scam. And then all of a sudden, boom, here you are. The price is way above what people ever thought it would go. And who gets the last laugh, you know? It's just funny. People are so resistant to new technologies, to new innovations. They called the internet a passing fad. You can go look at magazines where it shows all over their printing magazines, all over America, the internet is a passing fad. Just because the price had went down in the short term of internet stocks. But if you go look at a lot of those big companies, this is what happened after the internet bubble popped. Okay? Here's the internet bubble right here. This is the growth in our economy that came because of the internet, mainly. Obviously, other things too. But the internet really is what fueled this growth in the stock market. So that's the internet bubble and the internet bubble pop. But this is what came after. And if you look at Amazon, at the bottom of the internet bubble, the internet was not a passing fad, but I'm telling you right now that the news articles and the media were telling you that the internet was a passing fad right here. This is where they were telling you that the internet is a passing fad. So people are always resistant to new technologies, but look at what happened to Amazon, for example, after that point. Isn't that insane? The growth that happened on Amazon since the bottom of the internet bubble out. Like, look at this. Amazon did like 80,000%. That's 800 times your investment from buying the bottom of the internet bubble pop. And guess what? Altcoins like AVAX, their internet bubble happened in 2021. So if you want to talk about opportunity, buying AVAX right now is like buying the bottom of the internet bubble when people were saying that the internet was a passing fad. And AVAX is just one example that I'm using to bring home this point of crypto as a whole being insanely undervalued and being in the opportunity of a lifetime. See that? So right here, when people thought the internet was a passing fad, crypto's a passing fad. You know, people have a bunch of negative stuff to say about NFTs. That's a whole other debate, but NFTs is like one of those things. If you bring up crypto, they're going to bring up NFTs and tell you how stupid crypto is, you know. They're going to say, oh, what a dumb fad, that crypto stuff. People were buying NFTs, and look how dumb it is. That's the psychology of the public right now. All right? So if you want to make the right decision, look at this. Don't look at the news. Don't look at war is breaking out. Oh no, we're going to World War III. You guys, you know how many times I've heard that World War III was breaking out along the way up here on the stock market? So many times, like the whole way up. Apparently World War III is breaking out. So it's just ridiculous. But whatever, people will be people. But you don't have to be like them. You can be smart. You can do the right thing. Yeah, MKE, this is clear, calm, common sense. Let's see here. You have a way of calming fears. Thank you so much for your clear vision of what's really going on. Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I really do appreciate when you guys say those kinds of things, because it's really fulfilling to see the people are getting value out of my channel. The people are learning stuff. The people are making better decisions, and ultimately, the people will make more money, even if you're down right now, you know. TFuel, LFG. Sure. Let's pull up TFuel. TFuel is really the same thing. Like everything that I've been drilling home about market cycles, I can already tell you right now, TFuel is that. So first of all, the Bitcoin chart, look at this thing. This looks so good versus Bitcoin. TFuel versus Bitcoin right now, look how good of a buy that is. That's amazing. This reminds me, if you look at XRP/BTC and you go look at some of the previous times when it was good to go all in on XRP versus Bitcoin, for example, look right here, okay? Here's XRP BTC on the right, and here's TFuel on the left. So this right here, when XRP bottomed right here versus Bitcoin, I'm telling you, going heavy into altcoins right now. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin will go $250,000 plus before the next big mania is over with the crypto markets. But I will tell you that altcoins are going to make you more money. If you pick the right altcoin, not all of them, but if you pick the right altcoin and you scale out instead of holding on, because they'll also drop harder, because they always do, you're going to make more money on altcoins than you will with Bitcoin. But I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. I'm not telling you guys that Bitcoin is a bad investment, because it's actually one of the best investments in the entire world. But this is the fact of the matter. TFuel versus Bitcoin, perfect entry. Like amazing entry right now. But even aside from TFuel versus Bitcoin, everything that I've been talking about with market cycles applies perfectly to TFuel. So let's pull up TFuel versus the dollar. And what I've been telling you guys in today's stream about the depression phase of a market cycle, about being down like to the 95% retracement or even a little bit lower sometimes, that's what TFuel is. TFuel had its big parabolic run here in 2021. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I get angry comments from people telling me that TFuel will never have a run again. And they say the same thing about AVAX. They say the same thing about all these altcoins that I'm bullish on, saying it's had its day. It's never going to run again. The bear market's happened. It's dead. It's never going to recover. That's what people tell me. Not everybody, but there's people that say stuff like that. Fact of the matter is, TFuel is a perfect investment. Perfect entry. Best possible time to buy this is right here, right now. This is the nature of cycles. Do you really think that it's cool to buy something that nobody cares about? No, it's not cool, and it's not popular, and it's not sexy. But it makes you money, and that's sexy. And if you want to be popular, that will make you popular if you have a bunch of money. But you don't have to. You could always just ignore everybody and go live somewhere alone with like millions of dollars in your bank account, you know. But seriously, it's not cool or sexy to buy the bottom of market cycle, but that's what makes you a bunch of money. So this is what is true for TFuel. And by the way, let's pull up, let's see what's another really good example. Let's just use Ethereum because it's a classic example of a cycle. Pulling up Ethereum here in 2018 and 2019 did the same thing as TFuel, and you know what? What's funny about this, you guys, is people told me at the bottom here on Ethereum, people told me the same thing. They said Ethereum's dead. Ethereum's had its day. It's never going to run again. There's too many negative things happening with the foundation. People had 1,000,001 reasons to be bearish on Ethereum down here. But I stayed bullish because of market cycle analysis, because I was blessed enough to have a really, really cool guy from the Netherlands named Pygos that taught me a whole bunch about what big institutions do in terms of market cycles and Fibonacci, that had learned from professionals. Really, really smart guy. He showed me what to do. So when Bitcoin and crypto had a bear market in 2018, I was able to stay level-headed enough to not sell all my crypto, to not delete my YouTube channel like a lot of people were doing, and to stay bullish. And then 2021 happened, and it changed my life again. And it was super fun to ride the pump. But market cycles is what kept me alive during that period, what gave me hope. And then that hope became knowledge, and that knowledge became profits. So really cool to understand the cycle, right? So that's my thoughts on TFuel, John. Hi, I know it might be hard to predict, but I'm wondering how long it might take for BTC to get back to its old all-time high. 100% Bitcoin will be above its old all-time high this year. 100%. I have no doubt in my mind. It wouldn't surprise me if Bitcoin is back above its all-time high within the next few months, like by April or even May. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Bitcoin over 126,000 per coin by April or even May. Because here's the deal. Just as fast as we crashed, we can recover. I've seen it happen plenty of times. In fact, sometimes I've seen the recovery happen faster than the crash. That's what happened here. The crash took a long time. The recovery was almost instantaneous. That's what happened right here. The crash took a long time. The recovery was almost instantaneous. So you can see, I mean, even look right here on Bitcoin right here, right? Big crash on Bitcoin. The recovery happened a little bit faster, but pretty much the same amount of time. So you can recover just as fast, if not faster, than you crashed. Look right here. Look how long Bitcoin crashed here in 2018, and through this whole period it was crashing. Then look how fast it recovered. So think of pulling a beach ball down into the bottom of, like if you're swimming at the lake or in the ocean, and you carry a beach ball down to the bottom, it takes time to take it down. But once you let go of that beach ball, all of the air is going to pop it back up to the surface way faster than it ever took for you to carry it down into the water. And that's also true for markets. You see that that's very typical. It either takes about the same amount of time to recover, sometimes it's even faster, which is pretty cool. So as bold as that is, and as crazy as that sounds with how many bears there are, it wouldn't surprise me to see Bitcoin either at, near or even above its old all-time high at 126,000 by May of this year. But for sure in 2026 we will see it. I'm very confident in that. Let's see. Yeah, man, action trumps everything. I agree. People, if you take positive actions in the right direction, way better than speculating. Positive action is a really good thing to do. We win together. Very cool. Yeah, that's the goal, that we can all win together. That's literally part of my mission statement of my YouTube channel. Litecoin. You know, I was going to make a Litecoin video today, so I'm glad that somebody requested Litecoin. Let's pull up old LTC here. By the way, you guys, this is what capitulation looks like. Okay? Look at Bitcoin, okay? Let's pull up, we'll keep Litecoin over here on the right, okay? And we're going to pull up Bitcoin over here on the, or we'll keep Litecoin over here on the left, and we'll pull up Bitcoin over here on the right, okay? So here's Bitcoin. When I first got into Bitcoin, Bitcoin was worth $180. Let's pull up BTC USD on Bitstamp, where we have the chart that goes back a little bit further. And what happened to Bitcoin was Bitcoin did this sideways accumulation like this. I remember my little brother told me about Bitcoin in 2014 because he had watched a Watch Mojo video on YouTube, told me that Bitcoin was this currency that you could mine with your computer. It was worth real money. And I looked him in the eyes and I said, Caleb, that sounds like the biggest scam in the entire world. You have to be careful what you learn about on the internet, you know. So I was that guy too at one point, believing that Bitcoin was a total scam because it just sounded like totally weird and like crazy to me, you know. But then I looked into it more. And I was like, this is actually real technology. This is like the internet. This is a protocol like the internet. This solves the double spend problem that people had been trying to make digital currencies for since like the 80s. People had been trying to make digital currencies. But they had this big problem called the double spend problem. And whoever invented Bitcoin solved it. So I'd been watching Bitcoin since 2014. So when Bitcoin came down here, I started investing in Bitcoin in 2015 because I watched a Joe Rogan, Andreas Antonopoulos podcast talking about Bitcoin. Andreas Antonopoulos sounded super sharp and like really clear-minded, and I was like, this guy must know something. So I bought my first Bitcoin in this area right here. And it was actually panicking like really hard. So I was able to buy it at like $180 or around 200. I'd have to go look, but it was like 180 or 200, somewhere around there. Okay, under $300 per coin. So this pattern is not something that's new to me. This big ABC correction followed by sideways accumulation. If you look right here, if you zoom into the sideways accumulation, this is what Litecoin is doing right now. This is what Litecoin is doing. See this big crash followed by kind of like this choppiness, another big crash on some exchanges. This crash was even deeper than what we see on Bitstamp because there was more arbitrage at that point in time. So different exchanges had bigger gaps in price than what we typically see today. So right here at the bottom of that correction on Bitcoin is really, this is where I bought my first Bitcoin. It was right, didn't even know that I was getting a perfect entry. I was just excited about it because it sounded cool. Then Bitcoin proceeded to break out to $500 and I got super excited, you know. I went to McDonald's with my friends, but we were like, you know, we were hanging out, we were buying like spicy chicken sandwiches in the McDonald's parking lot talking about Bitcoin. Like, this is crazy, you know. Bitcoin is like, it's like power over governments, like all these corrupt big institutions. I was kind of like I was a hooligan when I was younger, all right? Total hooligan. But Bitcoin got me super excited. It broke out to $500 per coin. What do you think Litecoin is getting ready to do? Not $500 per coin because the price positioning is a little bit different. But in the near future, I could see 230. And then that's the beginning of a massive uptrend for Litecoin, because that'll be the first higher high and higher low in a new uptrend. A big breakout to 250 like this, followed by a correction, and then a reaccumulation will be the first breakout, upward move, higher high and higher low in a new uptrend. And look what happened to Bitcoin after it broke out to $500, pulled back. Look at this. Look at that uptrend that came. Little did I know I was going to almost become a millionaire by the time I was 21. I made just under $1 million by the time I was 21 years old from this pump on Bitcoin and from a bunch of altcoins that I had invested in as well, and helped other people make a bunch of money too. One guy in my Discord made $2.6 million off of my Stellar Lumens call, off a single trade. Now, he had a lot of Bitcoin, but still, isn't that cool? So this is what's coming for Litecoin could be the beginning of something very big, something astronomically large. And so that's why I tell people, what you should be looking at Litecoin is this big accumulation here over multiple years. That's what you should be looking at. Not the news, not what's popular, not what's cool, not all the people that are bearish on crypto. Don't listen to those guys. This is what you should be looking at. You should be looking at this. And whether you like Litecoin or not, fact of the matter is 90% of cryptos follow each other. So even if you're a super hater of Litecoin, don't be bearish on it even if you hate it, okay? Because fact of the matter is crypto, most of these coins are going to follow each other. Litecoin has an established enough community, enough big investors, big whales are invested into it. It's going to follow the rest of crypto. I like Litecoin. Some of you guys probably don't. But the fact of the matter is when crypto's going up, crypto has like a 90% correlation to itself. So everything's going to pump all at the same time. But Litecoin looks exactly like NVIDIA when NVIDIA did a big multi-year accumulation pattern before it pumped all the way to a new all-time high. So I'm pretty bullish on Litecoin. And by the way, thank you guys for all of these altcoin requests in the chat. It is super fun to be able to cover these projects for you, to be able to share my analysis, to be able to work together as a team. We're one big family here at HAI. And I really, really want to continue to build this relationship with you guys, to continue to help you, to teach you what I know, to help you guys be profitable, to stay profitable, whether in corrections or pumps, that we can all make a bunch of money together as a big family and maybe go rent a yacht and have a big party sometime or something. You're going to be wiping your trash with your $100 bills here soon. Oh, man. Oh, you're responding to John Cook because he has 2.6 million TFuel. I actually agree. He probably will be wiping his butt with money with that much TFuel. Or you could just get one of those bidets and have water spray on. All right, we better change the subject. We're getting a little off course here. Oh, man. That's funny. All right, you guys. One last thing I want to show you before I go, because I'm an hour in here. Don't mind my slightly crude humor. I'm sorry. I actually don't really do that very often. I'm actually a pretty clean cut guy overall. I try to be. Let's pull up Apple here. Oh my goodness. You want to know where crypto's at right now? I'll tell you. Crypto is doing the same thing that Apple computers did as Apple computers broke out into the most monstrous, massive, parabolic, super uber bullish uptrend of just ever. Okay. Apple became, before NVIDIA, Apple was the biggest stock in the world, the biggest company in terms of market capitalization before NVIDIA. All right. You want to know where crypto's at right now? This is what crypto's doing. Here was the internet bubble on Apple. Here was crypto's first big bubble. Okay. Here is 2008, right here, housing market crash. Here is FTX market crash. What Bitcoin is and crypto and altcoins and the entire crypto market is doing right now is this. Do you see this? This pump right here? That's the same as this right here. And there's a couple different kind of connections that I could see here. If you zoom into to Apple right here, you see a crash where Apple crashed as it broke above the top of this 2008 market crash right here. You can see it crashed right here. And if you zoom in, it's actually a pretty big crash right there. And came back down to the top right here of this move. Let's delete this. Delete there. You can see as Apple broke above the 2008 financial market crash, you pump up, you pull back, there's a crash right here. Okay. That's my first kind of idea of what crypto is doing right now. So here's the FTX crash. We pump up above, and then we crash right here. It looks like a bigger crash because of the time frame difference here with the crypto markets versus the Apple chart. But if you go down to like the 2-day, for example, with Apple, you can see that that was actually a pretty big crash on Apple as well at that point in time. It looks like a wick because it happened a little bit faster because of a time frame difference. But that's the first kind of connection that I can see here. The other way that we could look at this is that that crash isn't the crash that we just had, but this one is. See this crash right here on Apple? So this crash that we're currently seeing could also be this crash right here. Who cares? Whether it's this crash or this crash, both of those drops were fully recovered and the price of Apple went soaring after both of them. So whether you're comparing this point of the fractal or that point of the fractal to line it all up, fact of the matter is it doesn't matter. Because Apple went into a monstrous uptrend all the way to a new all-time high and just kept pumping and kept pumping. And crypto is set up to do the exact same thing, even right down to the volume on the chart. Looking at the volume here, look how much volume there was here early on with Apple computers. That is big institutions accumulating Apple computers. That's what that is. That's big institutions with billions of dollars putting massive amounts of money into Apple computers early on before everybody else started buying it when it became overvalued. And what do you think crypto is doing right now too? Crypto has had really since 2017, but especially since 2021 and recently, billions of dollars of big money, big institutions putting money into this market. And by the way, increasing price and increasing volume is bullish. Do you see this? Increasing price, increasing volume. That's bullish. That is by definition bullish. Now, of course, once the big institutions were positioned on Apple, you see volume going down. But the price kept going up because the big institutions were already in the market. So they kept the price of Apple just kept pumping. At some point, it will have to top out. Do I think that's right now? No, I highly doubt it. I bet Apple could even go to $400 per share before the true top is in. But we're rising on low volume now, which is bearish. Ultimately, it will have to top out at some point. But all of this happened because of all of this volume right here. So imagine what can happen for crypto. Imagine how big crypto can grow, how much it can pump between now and when it starts doing what Apple's doing, which is getting overvalued and rising on low volume. But we can pump for a long time. I bet from now on out, we'll see crypto volume start to decline, but the price of crypto will keep pumping. And then at some point, it will have to top out because there won't be volume to sustain the trend anymore. Just like there isn't volume to sustain the uptrend on Apple. But Apple will pump harder before it pulls back. There's a lot of reasons. We can talk about that on a different live stream, but I'm over an hour into this stream, so I don't want to keep talking about stuff forever. But this is what I fundamentally, firmly believe with all of my heart, all of my mind, is coming for crypto. A big, massive pump. So that's super exciting, you guys. What's coming for crypto? Same thing as what happened after the internet bubble popped and everybody thought it was a passing fad. Real growth, real adoption, real big picture growth. Not just a pump and up, but big picture growth. That's what's coming for crypto. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love and appreciate every single one of you. If you guys enjoyed this live stream or learned something, please do me a favor and share it with your friends. And I look forward to seeing you guys in future live streams. And as always, stay profitable out there.